good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope you enjoyed the film, The Last Artisan. And I'm afraid because of COVID regulations, we're not able to have you ask your questions verbally. So please scan the QR code, and it will take you to a Padlet where you can leave any questions, comments for today's panel or about Haw Par Villa in general. So just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Chua Aileen. I'm the Executive Director of the Singapore Heritage Society. And how many of you here have heard of Singapore Heritage Society before? Okay, some of you, not everyone. So the society was founded in 1987. We're a non-profit, non-governmental organization and an independent voice for heritage conservation in Singapore. We're also an IPC charity. So we welcome any of you to join us as members or support us also by giving a donation. And if on the way in you would have seen our counter outside, you can find out more about our society and how to join us from the team outside wearing the Heritage Society t-shirts. Now on your way in, you will also have seen the boards that we have pinned up outside about Haw Par Villa. So we also invite you to go out and use the post-its to put out what your impressions of Haw Par Villa on the board, but also you can use the Padlet QR code. So, without further ado, are we ready to start the discussion? Okay. So, let me just have a quick look at the Padlet to see if there's any questions. Okay. So, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. We're very happy to have with us Adeline Teo. She's the daughter of Mr. Teo Veoh Seng, the Last Artisan, and you saw her in the documentary, I'm sure you remember. And next to Adeline, we have Jonathan Lim, writer, actor, theatre director, and producer of the Cock-Eye Club app and game about Haw Par Villa. And of course, last but not least, we have Professor Puay Peng. He is the head of architecture at NUS, and he also holds the UNESCO Chair on Architectural Heritage Conservation and Management in Asia. And Professor Ho has the distinguished achievement of having worked on the Haw Par Villa Mansion in Hong Kong, the conservation of the Haw Par Mansion in Hong Kong. So I'm sure he'll have very interesting experience to share with us about that. So first off, maybe I just thought I'd ask each of you, before I ask you maybe for some responses to the film, why is Haw Par Villa so important to you? Why is it special to you? And maybe we'll start with Adeline. Maybe it's obvious, but tell us a little bit about what it means to you.
Well, can you hear me?
Put the mic very close to your mouth.
Okay. I guess Haw Par Villa is not just an important gem of my family, but it's also my extended family because we live there. That's our childhood playground, and it's also our house. So our 4 generations lived there throughout the whole, I think, I moved out when I was about 6 years old. But on and off, I still go back because my dad is was the first one to move out. But my second sister and my elder sister still live there quite a fair bit. So it's actually our family gems, I would say. So yeah, not just a playground, but it's also because my dad works there for 70 over years. My grandfather has a drink store there. My uncle has a camera store there. So it's the whole entire place. Yeah.
So your 4 generations of your family so intimately connected with the place, both as where you live and where...
Yeah. It's kind of an integrated place for us. It's not just a home, but it's integrated for our whole entire family.
Right, yeah. And Jonathan, tell us why Haw Par Villa is special to you?
Speaking personally, I think if I think back now, it's the only attraction that has been with me since I was, I don't know how old. It's the one place I remember visiting the most as I grew up, that I kept going to as a student, that I kept going to as I grew up. I don't remember any other attraction featuring in my life so much. I must have been there hundreds and hundreds of times, nothing compared to your family. But if you think about it, where have you been that many times in your life and that still has meaning for you, after all this time? So I think something about it has always drawn me there, has always brought me back, will continue to bring me back. And in a way, I'm personally trying to understand what that magic is, what keeps bringing me back. It changes. It changes. Every time I go back, it speaks to me differently. That's very rare to find. So I'm very glad I found Haw Par Villa and I have that in my life. And thank you to your family for that.
Glad
Thanks.
to hear.
And how about you, Professor Ho?
I must say that I think that there are many layers of meaning for me for Haw Par Villa. I think obviously when I was growing up, we all went to Haw Par Villa, but I was also looking through the albums of my father, who was an architect as well, and I saw pictures of him visiting the villa all the way back in 1938, which is a year after the villa was opened, and his dating history had been recorded in photographs, sometimes going back twice in a week, because he wrote at the back the dates where he and my mom were in the villa, and also my sisters, my family. I mean, so that layer of history obviously is very interesting for myself. But obviously with the work in Hong Kong, before the Hong Kong Haw Par Villa was somehow dismantled. I was working on the preservation of the building as well as the statues and the pagoda, the pavilions. I conducted measure drawings, so I touched every rock, every sculpture, every building, and it's I mean it's very similar to the one in Singapore. And so working as well with Sally Au, the daughter of Au Bun Hao, very closely, and so that is another layer of experience for me, but also history in a way. Yeah.
And just to remind the audience, in Hong Kong and Singapore, what's the difference between what we have left?
The Hong Kong Haw Par Villa originally was really very extensive, much larger than the Singapore one. But slowly over the years, the family sold off part of the Haw Par Villa. And in the 90s, mid-90s, a very, very similar time, slightly later than the Singapore Haw Par Villa, the whole site was sold off to a developer. And at that time, the government was wondering, because that also was a very iconic site in Hong Kong to many Hong Kong people, and so they were questioning whether that sales should go ahead, whether it should be preserved, and finally they decided that they only preserve the house, the mansion, and not the garden. So the garden had been dismantled, and the house was preserved. So in a way, the house is slightly different from the one in Singapore, where Charles Ho designed the very super futuristic house. In Hong Kong, it's more a traditional Chinese style English house. So that's the difference. So in Hong Kong, you have the house, but no garden. Here, you have the garden, no house.
I must add, though, that my fate with Haw Par Villa is so strong that my dad has migrated to Hong Kong. He lives there now. And he lives just a few hundred meters from the Hong Kong Haw Par. So whenever I visit Hong Kong, I still have a Haw Par. Well, I used to have a Haw Par on hand. And it's a fascinating place. Very different.
Now you can still go to the mansion, because the mansion is already revitalized. So you still can go to the mansion, and we actually kept some of the sculptures. Yes. So some of the sculptures are placed inside the mansion in the garden. Yes.
So in Hong Kong, the mansion has been preserved. Yes, okay. Maybe I'm also curious to find out how each of you felt after watching the film. So maybe I'll leave Adeline first. I know you've watched it many times. Professor, how about Jonathan? How do you feel after the film?
I remember thinking at one point how, as we approach the end of the film, that it's also called the next artisan, right? And I love that focus on the passing of the baton, and the very quirky sort of developing of a friendship between them. They won't be so lonely working in the park now, which is kind of nice. It's challenging in my mind to imagine how it will change, because so much of it has been shaped by your father's imagination and his unique skill, and passing on to the new pair. Haw Par's going to look different. It's going to look different, right? And I'm looking forward to that. I don't know how much of it has already become a new style? I don't know. Is it sort of 50-50, your dad's vision and their new one, and how long before it will become 100% fresh? But I think that is Haw Par. Haw Par has changed so much as I grew up, and it's nice to see the next chapter. So I'm looking forward to that.
How about you, Professor Ho?
Yeah, no, I enjoy what you said, Jonathan. I think it's really a very a place where it's sort of a living tradition that sort of got changed, and I like how the film actually fade in and fade out of the past, the black and white photographs, as well as what it is now, and you can see the changes, right? But I also feel the sense of obviously Mr. Teo had been there for such a long time. A sense that that his spirit live on in a way. I mean, even though the baton has been passed to the next generation, but I mean, he kept saying that they are not up to the job. So I just feel that his spirit had been living there and continue to live there. And I'm sure, I mean, his spirit will be guiding the two new artisans. No, you're not doing it correctly. I mean, paint it properly, or paint it faster, and all that. Right? I think that's to me is a fantastic documentary. But it's sometimes when you talk about the lost, you have a sense of sadness, the closing of an era. But I think the film, as you said, has also moved on to the next generation, and to me that I think is very interesting. Yeah.
And Adeline, how was it for you?
Well, first I would like to thank Craig and the team for taking 3 years to film this. So if you've watched this, it's actually a 3 years or more hard work to produce this documentary film. He's been quite patient with my dad.
I'd just like to say that Craig McTurk, the director, is here, and also the cameraman, Chris and Jonathan.
Yeah. It's not easy because sometimes you will see my dad go over and over and over again about certain things, right? So there are a couple of things that I just want to share personally with you all is, first, my dad picked up the skills without a master that passed the whole knowledge. He has to pick up by himself. So you can hear him saying that, he has to listen, he has to see, and he has to do. So this is how he picked up at the age of 13. Of course, he has got more than, he's 70 years of experience doing that. But he's a little bit impatient is because he wants to quickly pass it on so that he can continue that, that skill set, so that it doesn't die there in a sense. But at the same time, he felt that there are some skills that passed on but was not fully picked up, because if you look at how he explained, right, he said that it's not about just painting. You have to learn how to repair the broken statue. You need to learn how to mix the cement so that you can even repair it. At the same time, you need to learn how to do the wiring, because inside the statue itself, it's not just cement. They are wired in there. So you need to learn how to do that. And in those days, I mentioned to Eileen before, right? At this age of time where we have our mobile phone, we can capture the picture very vividly. But during his time, he has to paint and coat white paint, a sealant, not just one layer, but 2 layers, because his belief, and he was taught in a way that if you have those coat of paint, and once you put on the colors, you can last at least 3 to 5 years. So 5 artisans paint one area, it can last for many years. So he's a little bit frustrated in the sense that sometimes you see the 2 trainees, the way they stroke it and all those. I have the experience because when I was primary school, when I paint my trees, when we were young, we always paint the tree round. So I got a bit of a scolding from him, and I have to paint just one tree until 1 a.m. Because he would say that, go out and see how the trees looks like. It doesn't have that, trunk and the round shape. So even to his own kids, he would be very perfectionist in a way that he will teach you. So he would like to pass his skill very much to the 2 trainees. And if you see the two trainees, one of them has been there for many, many years, like 5, 6 years. He couldn't pick up the skills. So the second trainee that came on board, because he has the background of painting, so he picked up faster than normal. So that's how he's quite frustrated. Of course, his loudness doesn't help too, because he's one side deaf, so he couldn't hear his own voice. So people doesn't know that he's speaking very, very loud because he couldn't hear one side. So he speaks very loud. Even to us, he speaks very loud. And one more skills that never passed on, and I spoke to Craig about, was, you see the bamboo poles, right? The stilt and scaffolding he has to build. He built it himself. All the artisan has to learn how to build that, because if you don't build that, you can't paint the top part of it. So that's why we quite touch and appreciate what Craig has actually put the film through. So these are the things that is very, very difficult to produce, because those were the days that you have to do it, now you can't. And importantly, he kept telling the trainees on the values, because this is what Haw Par Villa is about. Is the Asian culture, the strong value that this place brings. And you don't see the younger generation visit the place anymore, because he has been telling us, his children, and also the trainee, that you got to be good, you got to do good, be patient, don't get angry and stuff like that. So I guess this place has not only is a park to go to, but is to learn about the culture and the values that this place has actually brought us and everyone.
Thank you very much, Adeline. So we have quite a few questions here, and maybe I'll read out a few and see how you want to respond to them. So one group of questions is about exactly what Adeline was talking about, this transfer of skills and the style of the new artisans. So one question is there a particular painting style or motif that the sculpture and the landscapes have to be kept in, or does it change with each artist? And another related question is, how have gaps in knowledge transfer between the generations of artists and owners resulted in the historical accuracy or integrity of the statues being compromised over the years? And how can we tackle this? Anybody want to respond to those questions?
I'm afraid if I respond, it will be more academic in a way, because I'm a Chinese art historian, and so when we look at this, if it's from the artistry point of view, then we'll say that obviously there's the content, the form, and the appearance, right? What you see and how you are touched. I think the story themselves, I really like what Adeline just said. It's ethics, it's moral, is dialectic in purpose, and therefore it is a teaching tool to be good. And so if that story can come forth, that will be really sufficient. So whether the form or the actual say the paint color changes, I think it changed. Craig's documentary showed that it really changed, right? And so it really don't matter to me, because I think as long as the story, the contents can be translated and manifested. However, in strict art historical point of view, obviously you need time to follow the master, and you need time to learn from the master and to carry out the things that the master had been doing. But I think in this case, that is not essential for me. So the authenticity of Haw Par Villa and all the sculptures would be in the content, not in the not in the color. Right?
So I remember when I was researching for my app, and I spent a lot of time there, and I actually spent a lot of time harassing your dad, and watching him work and watching him climb. And I remember one day I got the courage to ask him the one question I really wanted to ask, and that is, how do you remember what color to paint? And that's when I realized, when he told me that he just starts fresh, and it's a whole new set of colors every time. And that's when everything changed for me. It blew my mind that this man has this huge 3D coloring book for himself to play with every few years. And it's fantastic. And that's exactly what we mean, right? That what's underneath has never changed. Since the statues were built, what they represent, what they're here to tell, the stories that they hold. But the cosmetic just keeps transferring, and I think that's wonderful. That's for me why Haw Par can and should live on, because it's always been designed to be repainted, represented, repainted, represented, but something precious is always maintained, you know.
I will share something that many people don't know. If you give my dad a white piece of paper to draw, he will tell you, I don't know how to draw. So I tried that many times since I was a little girl. So each time he says, I don't know how to draw. But if you give him the, the figuring or a statue or sculptures, he will know how to paint. So, and I mentioned just now that you have to paint the whole thing white, at least 1-2 layers, in order to add colors. Is what Jonathan said, right? It's really a whole new, fresh piece of art, I would just call it. And, does it change in terms of the stroking and all those? It does. The first thing, if you visit Haw Par Villa again, look at the pair of eyes and whether the eye speaks to you. Because the eyes is in Chinese, we call it Xing Ling Zhi Chuang. So it really speaks. And the color, the vibrancy of the color, it does speak. And because I do painting, well, I'm not an artist, but I just do some painting myself. The strokes tells you, if you really go into detail. So if you look at one section that was talking about the print of the clothing, if you don't remember the print of the clothing and you print something else, then of course it's a totally different thing. But the stories of the diorama is there. It's no change because the story is there. It's just how the whole piece of the story speaks to you. That's how it brings up to you. So that's a bit of a different in some way.
So we have quite a few questions here. Many people are asking about the future of Haw Par Villa. So I'll just read out a couple of questions again. One is, how is the villa important for Singapore, and what is the future plan to keep it? So maybe I'll just add in here quickly that at the moment, Haw Par Villa is is overseen by the Singapore Tourism Board, and it is tendered out to an operator, that's Journeys. And as to what the future plans are, I guess we're not really sure right now. That's just what we know. And in 2017, the National Heritage Board commissioned a conservation study, and that report has been passed to STB, and that's all we know. So I'll just put that question out to the panel. How important is Haw Par Villa for Singapore? And another related question, how do we keep Haw Par relevant in the future? Is it more important to redevelop the villa in a modern interpretation to appeal to younger Singaporeans? And we've seen how Dragon World tried to do that in the late 80s. Or to keep maintaining the same works as a historic place? So I wonder if anybody would like to respond to this topic of the future. Jonathan, you made an app. What? You made an app. Come on, tell us about this game and app.
That's going to be a detour. Okay. Okay, but yes. So a lot of what I've been wanting to do and have done with Haw Par Villa is about re-engaging with that space in a new way for a new generation. Because, but first about why it's important, because this is something I hold to very dearly. It's again one of the only places we have in Singapore that is about storytelling. You know, you go there and you find yourself telling stories, or wanting someone to tell you stories. Otherwise, it's just a lot of statues with no meaning, right? You have to know, who's this, what's that, why are they fighting, why is that tiger green, what's going on, right? So all these questions, and when I went, I always had someone telling me stories, you know, and then I took over and I brought my friends, you know, and you guide people. And any space that can make people tell each other stories is very precious to a community, to a country. You know, you can go and look at, you know, giant flowers and all that, but you're not telling stories. You're not doing that most fundamental human thing. We all have to tell stories to connect, to imagine together, to dream together, to pass on our beliefs, our values, right? It's not about lecturing you how to be good, how to be bad. It's about showing you a story, telling you a story, and you learn. You learn what's important, right? So Haw Par is that. And I think in so many ways, Singapore's forgotten to do that. Maybe there's no time, maybe we're too busy, maybe we've lost the skill, but Haw Par always makes you stop, look, and share. So I just want to keep that going in whatever way possible. So part of why we wanted to create the app in the first place was to give the younger generation a reason to go down there, to run around, to solve a puzzle, to find treasure, but along the way, hear the stories, and start to get engaged in them as well, you know. And a lot of the things I'm thinking of for the future that hopefully will come to fruition are also about giving the young generation not just a way to tell the old stories, but to then tell their version. You know, how do you think this happened? What's the origin of this? Right? What's your take on this? You know, and I think then you suddenly become part of the story rather than just passing on tradition. You become part of a living thing. So hopefully, yeah. Otherwise, we've lost our best storytelling spot.
I think what strikes me is that your app doesn't change the site. It's not an intervention to the site, whereas Dragon World was an attempt to appeal to a modern generation, but made many physical changes to the place. Yeah. One question that's also come to mind is, you know, when we think about how we can preserve Haw Par Villa, how can we keep it going for the future, there's the question of the site itself, the physical site, but also, as we saw in the film, the intangible skills, and many of the questions here show a great deal of concern about that. I don't know if Prof. Ho, you might want to comment on, you know, the interplay between built heritage and intangible heritage.
Yeah, no, my own take on heritage is that the tangible and the intangibles are actually just one. And in the past, because of the conservation movement happening in Europe, we often privilege the tangible without looking at the intangible. And so was UNESCO really maybe 20 years ago that started to look at the intangible. And, but to have the two like side by side, I think it's not quite correct. So to me, tangible and intangible is actually just one cultural phenomenon, one society, one community, and whether it's one memory, one story, it all comes together. So I mean, I like what Jonathan said about storytelling. I think, Jonathan, you can be a professor because this is what we do. We just tell story, and when you tell story, really you tell story not about the tangible. You can tell story about the tangible. We can also tell story about the intangible, and the intangible may be expressed in the tangible, but the tangible without the intangible. Sorry, I mean, so quite a mouthful. The tangible without the intangible would be really dead. Would really has no meaning at all. And so I think the painting, as Adeline said, if you look into the eyes connect, and when it connects, it's living. And when it's living, when the story is added to it, then you don't see just the form, but you really see much more beyond, much more deeper into the story. And I think that's the beauty of Haw Par.
So I guess the question here is just, you know, one of the questions from the audience was, what is the future plan to keep it? So we do know that the site doesn't have any conservation status at all. So the future is a big question. So, but then even if the site is conserved, as you've mentioned, Professor Ho, and as we've seen in the film, there's so much more to it. Just preserving the site is not the end of the story, right? So there are quite a few questions here again about that. I'll read out some questions. How can the government or society support the passing down of craftsmanship knowledge in maintaining our heritage sites? And a secondary question, can they relax requirements for foreign craftsmen coming in or make it more attractive for locals going into such work? And someone asked the question even more succinctly, do we have space for such art and artisans in Singapore?
I think for us, we live in a very different world because we felt that, yes, there's a space for artisan. Yes, we should continue the tradition. But as Mr. Teo said, I mean, no Singaporean wants to do that, right? Wants to work in the sun, in the heat, and so on. I mean, we can create certain conditions so that they might be able to work on site without suffering from heat stroke or whatever. I mean, we started a conservation program in NUS, and we have a lot of students from China, but recently we have a lot more students from Singapore wanting to understand conservation. And one part of our course is about the actual work. So the actual conservation projects, and really they have to dirty their hands, they have to plaster, they have to sort of make the brickworks, look at concrete and so on, and paint and so on. And so I hope through this program, Singaporeans are encouraged to really, sorry, this sounds like an advertisement, but I think it's necessary that we learn the skill, and we learn the skill of conservation, and we can do it well. In many of the temples that have been conserved, most of the temples were done by Teochew or Hokkien craftsmen. But I think it's about time that we do it ourselves. Yeah, that's my belief, yeah.
Adeline, you had something to share on this.
As what my dad said, right? Singaporean doesn't want to work under the sun, and they like to work in the aircon. But if you look at all the works that, the skills and the work that he has done, you have to work not only under the hot sun, it's rain or shine. Rain or shine, and every day, one of the reasons why he retired and not continuing to do what he loves to do is because every day you have to walk up the hill. It's 365 days minus off the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, but it's rain or shine. So do you think Singaporean will like to take up that kind of job with low pay and no aircon? I'm not too sure about that. But I'd like to add on to what Jonathan said about storytelling. Yes, it's probably one of the few places that has a very strong focus on storytelling, and parents complaints about kids you know, in front of mobile phones and televisions and, you know, computer. Bring them to this place and start teaching them, or even tell stories. Because when I was a child, even my great-grandparents and my grandparents keep telling us the stories over and over again in different forms and different ways at Haw Par Villa. So this is how we grew up in that way. And I hope that one day the government or SCB add more technology into the whole place, because we travel to, you know, all the like Europe, and we go to all the museums. You have the plugged on of an audio book. Why can't we have that, right? Or you can have a 3D glasses and look at, okay, if you're not afraid, using the 3D glasses and walk around the whole place. And with the app that Jonathan has, it's actually, it can be fun. I was just sharing with Eileen when I was a little girl, that place is actually my playground, right? Because we will find every single corner to play hide and seek. Whenever we were small then, there were holes, we will have a slides. So the whole entire place is actually a playground. So why can't the parents of this generation bring their kids there and make a fun, like a Disneyland? In the 70s, it was a Disneyland of the 70s, because everyone would visit Haw Par Villa, and it's free because the Haw Par brothers are such a generous family, right? So why can't we just bring those old days back and walk back memory lane, right? In a more fun way.
Thank you. So I'm flooded with questions on the Padlet. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. But we only have 3 minutes left here before we have to leave the hall for the projector to prepare for the next screening. So I'm going to pick the question, which I think is a burning question here. If there's anyone who wants to take part in keeping the villa, how can they contribute? How do you think the audience and Singaporeans in general can support Haw Par Villa?
I mean, a lot of what I'm doing, because I'm not representing any organization, right? It's just me and a couple of friends, and I think it is important for the community to step up and say, we want this place to continue. We need this place. We see its value, and if no one else is going to move first, then we move first. So there's a lot that I've been getting advice from Eileen on, and hopefully advice from both of you now, in terms of creating lots of ground-up things that we can do, that involve just the general public. Let's engage each other. Let's all come together and find this place meaningful and send out that message, which is, don't touch this place. We're having fun here. This is our playground, right? Let's take it back. So if you're interested, I don't know, if there's a way that we can all get in touch and sort of connect together, make this thing happen. I feel that we were just talking about this before we came in, every time you do something about Haw Par Villa, it pops up, everyone hears about it, and then it disappears because it's not sustained, because you don't go every other weekend or every month like we used to, and then people forget. So many of my friends think it's still closed. People think that they built the train station to commemorate a thing that's gone, and I'm like, it's still there, it's free, go. There's only construction workers and domestic workers wandering around. There are no tourists now. Go. So I think we need to do something. No one else is going to do it for us. So yes, if there's any way at all we can pull together, I'm open to suggestions. We're all connectable on social media. Let's do something, and I'll count on Eileen to sort of keep us connected, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who will have the most to lose. I think no other government body or institution is going to feel the hurt as much as we will, because we will have no more stories to tell from this place, and I think that's unthinkable.
Maybe a quick word from Professor Ho.
When the Haw Par Villa came under tourism board, I thought this is really a very wrong thing to do. I was asked by tourism board to walk through the villa with them and to see what can be done. But their mindset is about tourism. Whereas what Jonathan is saying, and what I think should be the right thing to say, is that it belongs to us, Singaporeans. And if it belongs to us, we have to do something. If we lose it to the tourists, then it would not be part of us, part of our memory, part of our history, but also part of our identity. And I think that will be very important. So I think it has to be ground up. It has to be ground up, and we succeeded in our Dakota Crescents and Bukit Brown.
Golden Mile Complex, the latest
Golden
news
Mile,
today.
yes. But I think the Haw Par, has to be ground up. And so I will support whatever you do, Jonathan.
So if you want to leave your name and contact on the way out, do leave it at our counter. But Adeline, maybe a quick word from you, and one more question from the audience. How is your father doing today?
Okay, I'll answer my dad's at the later part of it, right? If you remember in the 80s, school excursion, I probably in the era, so school excursion is actually to Haw Par Villa. It's never to the zoo. And if you ask all your little kids or your friends' kids and all those, how many times they visited the zoo in 1 year? They'll probably tell you like 2-3 times, apart from the COVID situation. So why not Haw Par Villa, right? You got to start from there. I think we should just walk back memory lanes, and we start from there, where school excursion is actually to Haw Par Villa. So correct me if I'm wrong, this is one and only strong Asian cultural values in the world. So if you take away the place, you take away the whole entire, strong value that we have and the culture that we have. So to answer to the part about my dad, he's actually quite busy, because we are keeping him busy, because he loves what he loves to do, right? So my nieces, myself, my siblings has been checking our backyard and look at what are the sculptures we have, figurines that we have. And my nieces has been buying stuff from Taobao, to let him paint. So I even have a friend recently approached me and asking me whether she can bring her Mother Mary because it's been there for a long time, and there's some chips and paint is off, so to let my dad paint. So he's been actually quite busy, and he knows that he's not getting his health is getting a weaker now. So what he does is he goes coffee like 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So he goes down, walk 2 rounds, 3 rounds, and then he go back to his painting job. So it's at the HDB corridor. You'll see him on the floor, see him like what he's doing in Haw Par Villa on the floor, painting all the stuff that we send him, including like the fountain that we find that is a bit old, we send it to him and paint. So he's keeping himself very, very busy doing that and keep himself going. He's 86 now, or in Chinese he always says that he's 87. Sometimes he'll walk over to my apartment, which is just across, just to spot check some of the renovation that's going on. So because currently my house is under painting, so he will walk over and check the painter's work. So he's keeping himself very busy.
It's great to know your dad's still going strong. Yes.
Yeah.
So it only leaves me to do a round of thanks. First of all, to our wonderful panelists today.
And thank you everyone for coming to watch this 3 years of production of documentary film.
We'd also like to thank, of course, Craig McTurk and his students, Tingyi and Jeremiah, for filming the panel discussion today, as well as Chris Donaldson. And also, a word of thanks to Archifest for hosting this event, and for the Projector for having us here today, and also to my 5 interns and the Singapore Heritage Society T-shirts who've done an amazing job planning today's event. And last but not least, thank you to all of you who have turned up. If you have any friends who couldn't get tickets for today, please tell them to rent the Last Artisan from the Projector for video on demand to watch at home. Just go to the Projector website. Of course, you can also, Singapore Heritage Society has been running a series of social media posts telling you more about the history and heritage and the background to Haw Par Villa. So do check out our Facebook and Instagram for those if you haven't. Also have some Facebook Live interviews with all our panelists, and also Jonathan Poe, our Singapore Heritage Society Executive Committee member, who's also one of the co-curators for the heritage programming at Archifest. I think Jonathan may be over there. One more thing, yes, the video recording of today's panel discussion, after we've done the post-processing, will be put up on the Singapore Heritage Society Facebook and or YouTube channels. So thank you very much for today, and please leave your name and contact outside if you'd like to stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eileen.